Chapter 1, The Earliest Human Societies. Section 2, The First Communities. Now, in your notebook, you do not have to write the Chapter 1 title all over again because you've already written it once. What you do need to write at the top of the page or right below what you just finished writing is the Section 2 title. Section 2, The First Communities. All right, here's the first subtopic. It's called Settlements Begin, so that should be written next on your paper. And this particular slide has 4 bullet points, so you'll have 4 bullet points under this subtopic. Agriculture is the cultivation of soil to produce crops and developed in areas where water was available. There's another word that we like to use for agriculture. Can any of you think of it at the moment? Do, 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 do. It's called farming. Farming equals agriculture. It's the same thing. So it's the cultivation of soil to produce crops. Of course, you need water. Water is vital for agriculture. If you have no water, you have no crops. Now, in some areas that we're going to talk about, water wasn't always very accessible. So in order to get that water, a new type of technology was developed to bring water to your crops. This was called irrigation. Irrigation is the watering of dry land using systems of ditches, pipes, and streams. So if you're looking at this picture down here, this stream right here is an irrigation ditch because that's bringing water to the crops. You can kind of see it over here too, kind of cutting through the crop area. Now, water, of course, makes your soil fertile. Fertile soil is good for plants to grow in and produces bigger and better crops. So the better your soil is, the better your crops are going to be. So because of agriculture, that caused people to settle in one place, and these settlements became permanent. They didn't have to move anymore looking for their food. Very important time in history. So you have city life, and there are some advantages and disadvantages of having those little settlements form. Some of the advantages of having a village is you have more food. Because you're pooling it together for a whole group of people. And, of course, you're protected from attacks, for the most part. Some disadvantages of village life are you have more fires. The more people you have, the more chances there are for accidents to happen and more fires burning down your settlements. Diseases, the more people you have and in closer proximity to you, the easier it is to contract some kind of disease that is being spread around. And floods. And, floods, if you're by a river, which most of these settlements are, you're taking the chance that during the flood season, it's going to wipe away your village. And more people are affected by that. Now, as farming techniques start to improve through time, farmers began to produce something called a surplus. That's that word right there, surplus. Surplus means you grow more or have more than what is needed to survive. Now, if you're looking at this picture here of tomatoes, that is like a ton of tomatoes, and that's more than what one person could deal with. That's a surplus because you can use more people can use that group of or that bunch of tomatoes. That's what a surplus is. Surpluses allow populations to grow because you have more food, and people start to develop other varied special skills. Not everyone had to farm anymore. You have some people now who can just farm and other people who can do something else. They can make something else. Like, for example, baskets to gather the crops in, or you have people who are in control of the irrigation. So you see the surpluses allow people to do other things as well. The key word there, what we just talked about, is specialization. Specialization is a skill in one kind of work. So a farmer would be a specialization. Farming would be. Basket weaving is a specialization. Ditch digging for irrigation is a specialization. People could specialize in other areas besides farming due to the surpluses. Potters and weavers were among the first groups to specialize. You need something to store all the crops in. That's where the pots or the baskets would come in handy. Another specialization are priests. Now, when I mention priests, we're not talking priests like Father Jim in our church. We're talking about the earliest priest who dealt with the gods and spirits of the different things in their community. The first priests were known as shamans, who were thought to be in contact with the spiritual world. All right, here's the next subtitle. It's called Simple Villages Grow More Complex. Surpluses, back to that word, surpluses led to a growth in trade. When you have a bunch of one thing, like that picture of tomatoes, and it's more than what anyone in your community could eat, then you take some of that and you trade for things you don't have. Like, look at the picture here. You're trading, it looks like a sock, nice, for a duck. I guess that guy had a lot of socks. And this guy had a lot of ducks, so they switch. People who train in certain skills and crafts were called artisans. So, for example, those people who make the pots, they're known as artisans. People who make baskets are artisans. People who paint are artisans. Now, when you have a community and you have people who start developing these specializations, these special skills, they're going to probably associate with people similar to them. So people with similar skills developed into something called social classes, which is a group of people with similar customs, backgrounds, training, and income. Now I'm showing you an example here of a social class system. This is actually from ancient Egypt. At the top of this little pyramid, if you will, is the pharaoh, who is the king. They're at the top. Right below them would be the high priests and nobles. And below them would be officials, scribes, and minor priests. Below them are the craftsmen, and right at the bottom of the pyramid are the servants, laborers, and peasants. This is an example of social classes, people who have similar backgrounds, customs, training, and income. Also being created in these settlements is a government. Government was formed to provide order and leadership and to make the community safer and stable. Now, some of these early settlements that we've been talking about were simple villages, because when it's a simple village, you're basically farmers and you're growing crops for your community. You may have developed a couple of specialized areas like basket weaving and pottery making. But as more and more specializations start to arise and more people are doing different things, the form of governments, social classes, you're now creating a complex village. It's more varied and more complicated than a simple village. Large villages could have thousands of inhabitants or residents, while smaller ones would be in hundreds. Here is an example of a complex village. It's called Shotoku. It was located in what we now call Turkey today. It was an agricultural village of about 8,000 people, so that's a large community. They lived in similar buildings, so you can see an example of what those buildings may have looked like. Here are some remains of Shotoku that you see, so it kind of, in a way, looks something similar to this drawing that you see. One of their characteristics was burying their dead under the floors of their house. So if this is one person's house, the dead would be underneath that floor. They also painted on their walls. There are murals. Here's a real-life example of a mural that was found at Shotoku, or the remains of Shotoku. Shotoku was the center of trade, culture, and influence of that area. That's the end of section 2.